All right, people. So we are in the second episode, right? Of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And today we have what's our topic for today?
Discussing women's football. Should
All right.
pitch sizes and goal sizes be reduced?
Okay, who wants to jump in and start first?
Not me, man.
All right. Okay,
Should-
then since I'm the one who thought of topic, then I'll just go first, huh?
All right.
So, my thinking today is just to convince or open up your minds to changing the perimeters of the field and as well as the goalposts for women. Because for the measurements of the game, it was set a really long time ago, and it was based off the measurements for guys. So I don't really see why it's fair if you give this type of measurements for the girls. Maybe we can first look at the goalpost sizes first in terms of height, and the height differences between guys and girls. Then we can move on to the pitch, because I think that will be an easier topic to start off with.
Okay, so you're saying that so two things should change. One is the goalpost size and then the pitch size, right? So
Yeah.
actually, yes. I've heard some some sort of discussion on this, but I've never heard of. At least I can't remember hearing anything about the changing the goalpost size. But so that's an interesting take. Goalpost size. I mean, if you ask me, I think we don't have to, right? Goalpost size. I think we don't have to. Yeah, I think women don't come in same sizes, right? Some yeah, the tall women for sure. Then the short ones, yeah, just like any man, I guess. Just like how we don't change the goalpost size for whether it's football played in Asia or football played in Europe, right? So I think so I think it shouldn't. Yeah. But yeah, I can understand where you're coming from because the sizes, the goalpost size, the pitch size, they are based on men, right? Yeah. So I see where you're coming from. But I think we shouldn't. It's my take.
All right, Don.
Yeah.
I'm thinking. Yeah, we shouldn't. We should just stick with the normal goalpost size and the pitch size. Yeah. Don't reduce it or anything.
Okay.
So here's my take. Sorry if I can jump in. Okay, so I mean, if it's a match between women and women, right, and then the parameters, the goalpost size, the pitch size are the same, then I think that's fine, right? So I don't see why we should change it. The question will be, I guess, is if let's say it's a mixed sort of game, right? So where you have a team from both sex, right? So both male and female. Then should goalpost size change? Should the pitch size change? I know I think that's a question that I would ask. But if it's women, if it's all women, then I don't see why we should change.
Okay. So maybe I'll just come back to your first point about like how some girls come in different size like guys. While that's true, like you have a variance of height in girls and variance of height in guys. Generally, right, there is a 10 to 15 cm difference between men and women. And especially if you look at the UK, for example, men are about 175 and the women are 160. Then that translates to quite a lot of difference, especially on the pitch, because the goalpost is about 7.32 in height. Yeah, it's about 2.44 meters in height and 7.32 in length. And if you actually see women's soccer, right, and you see the statistics and everything, you realize that men's football, like English Premier League, they let in 2.66 goals per game. But in the women's league, the Women's Super League, they let in about 3.44 goals in every game. So there's a lot of reasons why there's a lot more goal scoring in the Women's League. But one of the biggest contributors to that, right, would be the goalpost itself. Because if you are placing a smaller person in goal, then obviously it's going to be much harder for them to reach the certain place because of like obvious reasons, like shorter feet, less reach. They have smaller muscles, less powerful muscles, so they cannot dive as far. And obviously, with the smaller reach, they can't reach the top corner as well. And if they're shorter, if there are headers coming along the way or crosses coming along the way, those balls can actually chip the goalkeeper much easier, and it's much harder for the girls to catch it. And I think that's been like one of the criticisms of like women's soccer, like they always have very shitty goalkeepers or bad goalkeepers, but it's not really the goalkeepers that are technically bad here. I mean, they have been training for a very long time, and some even in the top league let in funny goals or like goals that have quite a big gap in terms of height, right? And if we actually look at it in sort of like a historical sense, we understand like the picture a bit clearer. So basically, the FA, the Football Association, they were the ones who came up with this goalpost lah in about 1866 or 63. Yeah, 1863 in England. So that's when they actually made the law of how football should be played. And that goalpost was actually made based off the averages of all the guys. And then they found that any goalpost that is longer than 7.32 meters and longer than 2.44 meters is going to let in too many goals, and then it won't be interesting to watch. But if they make it smaller, then it's going to be sort of like too hard to score goals. Then it also won't be too interesting. So this was their definition of perfect at the time, and obviously at that time, women were not allowed to play soccer because of how like society just views women to just stay at home and not play any sports because it's too rough or too manly. So that now that we already progress and move on and it's 2021, I think it's also time to like make new changes for girls. So, and especially if we can both agree, I think the only thing that we agree now is that there's obviously biological difference between men and women, right? Guys are stronger, guys are taller generally. So why not sort of, it's not really like looking down on the girls, but why not adapt the equipment to fit them? Because if you look at other sports, basketball also use a smaller basketball because of the hands. A shorter net is used in volleyball. Women's hurdles in the Olympics are like 9 inches shorter than the men. If you look at lacrosse, the sticks is also shallower than the men's sticks. So why not football? I don't really understand why there's a need to keep what is like possibly not working as well. So yeah, those are my points.
Okay. So the idea of accommodating to the physique is one thing, but what about the practical aspect, right? So the idea of having different football size, different goalpost size, it's gonna think about the logistics, man. Think about the number of pitches that you have to cater to the different sex, right? So so instead of having just one field in a stadium, for example, now you have to have two, right? Or yeah. So what about that? I think it's gonna,
So I guess you don't really agree about, or you don't really disagree about the changing, but it's more of how to implement it now, I guess.
For argument's sake, let's say I agree.
Okay. So it's mostly about money, right? And the cost. And then again, I wouldn't really see how this would like be a very big change that you need to make. Like for example, all the other sports that are listed in terms of lacrosse, basketball, hurdles and everything like that, they also had to make equipment changes and change up the training. Because I bet obviously the women who weren't exposed to this before had to adapt to the new equipment and so on and so forth, right? And also they since like for example in volleyball, they also had to change the net, and then those were the things that they had to get used to. Those were the things that to buy again. But it made the game more exciting. They made the game better for women to dominate, and that's what the main argument is. Because while it's true that in terms of the logistics and in terms of the money, right, it's going to cost more and it's going to change up quite a lot of stuff. But then if you think about it in the long term, the whole reason of why we want to make it more fair for women and have them actually more dominant in the sport that they represent, because they are now using men's equipment, right? It's also to make it more entertaining. There's a big criticism of like people will say, oh, girls football is very boring, is lousy. That's why they don't earn as much as the men, blah blah blah. So actually, if we can actually improve the quality of the game, especially if it's more fair to the women, right? And then in turn, that can even generate more money in terms of World Cup, in terms of entertainment and everything else that comes into play. Then I think maybe in the short term, yeah, it's going to cost more and the logistics a bit hard to set up. But in the long term, it's been done for other sports and it's going to generate even more money if we're talking about entertainment value. Because I mean, obviously, like if you watch a game like USA versus Thailand, right, where you have a very very big difference in terms of size, and then the scoreline was like 13-0, and if you see a lot of the goals, they were using a lot of long balls and the way that they scored was quite comical. It actually made the women's game look quite stupid because all the balls that went in was just like high balls all over the goalkeeper. And it's just exploiting the basically like height weaknesses of the game, which doesn't make it look very technical, or so like those are my counter arguments for that.
Okay. Don, anything to add? Questions?
After hearing Sim explaining all the points, right, I feel like switching side to say that, yeah, we should change the goalposts and the pitch size. And yeah, of course, the logistics will come in. That's the next thing. But I still feel like it can be done with the money that they're earning. It can be done. I mean, for the pitch size, all they have to do is paint, right? If I'm not wrong. Or do they have to make another pitch?
I mean, if let's say they are really struggling, they can just bring the goalposts closer, and then also
the goalpost is easy.
Just bring in the demarcation of where they want to cut out. If let's say they're really strapped for cash, but if not, just make a separate one for women.
Yeah, so that's the logistic part. So Sim, you're saying that it's still worth the so-called investment now, because in the long run it's going to benefit everyone, right?
Yeah.
Okay, then here's another point I'd like to raise then. What about the women themselves? Do they actually want this change? Would you imagine that some of them would say that, hey, look, this is a sexist argument. No, we don't want the change, right? We are saying that we are not able to play an entertaining game, right? Yeah.
You want equal rights.
Yeah, and keep it equal, man. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, then I mean, if really we shouldn't look at it through the gender lens and look at what like nature gave us in terms of differences between male and female, right? Then why not we just have like males versus females? Then we scrape away all the other leagues. Because why can't girls compete with guys? It shouldn't be a difference if we're going under what they're saying, right? Because why do we need to create a league for women? Why we need to create a league for men? Just have them go together and like have real equal rights. I mean, but then obviously that is quite foolish to say, because in my opinion, right, it's exactly like why we have different fitness standards for women in the military. Like for example, if you do your IPPT, I'm gonna use a very outdated measure but when guys have to do pull-ups, we would have to do like 10 pull-ups to get gold in the IPPT. But then for girls, they didn't really have to do any pull-ups at all, or not as much, and that would be considered as gold already. So is setting the standards towards your physique being sexist, or is it being realistic and according to what you can perform to?
Okay.
Yeah. And then on to like to touch on your other points about the one that you made before about how the goalpost size in Asia versus goalpost size in Europe, should there be a change, right? I mean, to me, it's up to them. If like obviously if you're gonna compare the heights in Singapore versus compare the heights in Netherlands where everyone is like 1.88 there, then you can basically use my same arguments to come and justify that, okay, then we should change the men's goalpost, right? But then again, we have to think about it not only as a local level, because we compete in the World Cup also. So sure, you can go and change your local goalposts, and if the Singapore Football Association is on board with that, I have no problems, like, because I mean, if he's gonna make the guys better at the sport, or more entertaining, then go for it, because the S League number is horrible. But then the thing is, we have to think about when we go to compete for World Cup and we're going to compete on a global stage, right? We are going to use these kind of goalposts. So like to have a country segregated one is not very practical in my view lah. And also, if you want to compare like country to country, right, you should also compare like the like it accordingly to the gender. And if you compare it to the gender, right, like for example, if you go and compare it to the Netherlands versus Singapore in terms of height, again, the one that is even more drastic would be the women. So if we really want to go and argue for, let's change the goalpost height in Asia and Europe, then we should start off with the women first, because they are the ones that are obviously lacking the most in this aspect. So yeah.
Okay. All right. So I give right. I can concede, right? Yeah. Okay. So fine. The goalpost has, could probably do with a change for the women football, right? What about the pitch size itself, right? I mean, if you ask me, then the way if I would think that all the women have got to do is build up their stamina, build up their endurance, so that they can run the full length of the pitch, right? Yeah. So why should we change the pitch size then?
Actually, this pitch size topic didn't really come to my head as well until later on when I started to research more about like the body and like the way that I guess the females would play football and the males would play football. So in regards to most of the studies that I've seen, right, it found that women don't really run as much on a pitch. They don't really take long passes as well, because the pitch size is really wide. They have obviously, okay, so we are also built different in terms of not only like the amount of muscle mass we have, but the types of muscle mass. So like for males, right, we have more type 2 muscle fibers and we are more explosive. There's an evolutionary reason for that, like obviously, like escape predators to fight. When we're like I'm talking about like caveman kind of era, time frame. But like as of now, those are the still of like kind of the biological differences that we have between men and women. And so all of these like muscle differences when it comes to fast twitch muscle fibers helps us guys kick balls further than women, sprint faster than them. So it's like basically if you were to look at the stats for the Olympics, right, and then use your point about, okay, we don't really have to change the pitch size, because those are the things that they can train. So if you look at the Olympics, then you look at like for speed records in terms of like long distance to semi-short distances, you would still find that girls still lag behind the best men. Like the best of the females versus the best of the males, right? In every category, the males still lead by 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%. There's still the male gender advantage. And that's just based on like the anthropometry and the physiological factors that you're just blessed with as a guy, that you have bigger bone structure, wider surface area for muscle mass, and then obviously you would have more testosterone, which also then helps you to recover faster and to train harder, stuff like that. So with that being said, right, if you will look at how this will impact the game, they also found that because of the larger pitch size, and how they would navigate around not playing so much long passes and especially in terms of speed of game, because I think we can basically watch football and say that football is very entertaining, right? But I think one of the biggest reasons of why it's entertaining is counter-attacking football. Like nobody wants to watch Jose Mourinho park the bus and defend the whole 90 minutes. It's much more interesting if we watch both sides attack like crazy, and then at one end of the pitch, then suddenly 5 seconds later, the ball is at the other end of the pitch and stuff like that. But if you realize in women's game and in all of the statistics that I found, right, they don't really have that speed, and also it kind of detracts away from the game because why their counter-attacking football is much slower is one, they can't kick the ball as far. So to get the ball from one end to the other end, right, is going to come with a lot more skill or either short passes or a different change to their game. But either way, it's just going to make them slower. And then two is if we compare like the differences in height and the differences in muscle mass, right, and muscle type, those come into a lot of play because, like, for example, the stride length differences for men and women is 20 to 30%. So like every time you are comparing a running female and a running male, right, the length that the male takes is 20 to 30% longer than the female. So by the time he reaches the end of the field, right, it's quite a lot of distance covered and speed reduced as compared to the girl. So obviously, if you will watch end-to-end stuff where Mbappe sprints down the line, maybe in 10 seconds he can reach the other side of the pitch. Whereas if you were to watch a woman do that for that same amount of distance, right, she has to take a lot more effort. She has to take a lot more time to reach that same distance, and that might kill some like fun aspect of the game. If she wants to pass a long ball, like say 70 meters or 30 meters down the pitch, she would have to use like relatively much more maximal energy in her thigh muscles to kick it as far as a male. So they also found like quite a lot of disparities despite having the same pitches lah. So for example, right, even in a free kick, the defensive team would have to line up to make the wall, and in there the females are usually shorter, right? So what they found was it's actually much easier to score with the female on a team with just pure females because they are much shorter. So it's very easy for you to loop the ball over their heads. Whereas in a men's team, right, it's not the same because obviously the higher or the bigger or the buffer your wall is, then especially when a man can jump, it's not going to be as easy as to loop it over that net. So what they found was actually if we want to make it like true equality and make it really fair, right, it's either the wall should be placed about 8.45 meters from the ball or 10 meters for the men. So that means to make it fair, right, we have to make the men's game a bit harder now to compensate for what the women is going through.
I think there's gonna be a lot of drawbacks if we want to make the men's games more difficult. Just to compensate. Okay, I see what you mean now. I think you are quite right about the women's style of play. So there's fewer long passes and whatnot. So I do occasionally watch, women's soccer. So if let's say I'm TV surfing, and I do notice that hey, look, there's more short passes compared to long passes. I never really thought about that.
In the study, they also found, right, and I can just like link this later, they found that men create more fouls, they have more accuracy in their passing, they usually play faster, explosive football, they take more shots outside the box, and then females are more likely to take shots in the box. So actually, if we can reduce that middle distance that's in the pitch, right, by a bit, and then have them get to the penalty box faster, then they're able to make the game more exciting because they're ready to take more shots there. And their goal ratio per game is much higher than the men, so their conversion rate is also much higher. And if you like to see a lot of goals and that's what adds to the entertainment value, then that would be good for the game as well. Men also make more long passes, but they have slower recovery time than girls. But the reason why that even they take longer to recover the ball back from the girls, right, could be that the girls themselves don't really retain the ball well as men. That's why they keep losing it back to each other, if that makes sense. Or that the girls are better at getting the ball back from the opponent, but slower than getting it from one end to the other end. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So smaller pitch size, smaller goalpost for women's soccer. So I'm wondering actually, because mainly because of their physique, right? So that, yeah. Okay, so then okay. So here's an extreme point.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether this is a kicker. Then what if I say, then football isn't for women at all, right? So why play football? If they can't meet up to the standards of the goalpost and the pitch size, then that's on them, right? So I mean, you can't really make long passes based on the pitch size. You can't have a goalkeeper who can reach the ends of the goalpost. Yeah, so that just goes to show that this is a men's game. Then women just play other sports.
Right. Yeah, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But it's
I mean, yeah.
it's just that if you're gonna make those comments, then you can't really say that women's football is lousy and that they deserve to be paid less, because if you're not giving them an equal playing ground to play on, then you can't really make that comparison between men and girls,
Just like other sports, like you were saying, right? So there are differentiation, right? So in other sports already. So why not football?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting argument there.
And like I think if we're gonna have that mindset that we should just go off the men's standards and like just keep all the rules the same. Actually, the football rules always been changing. Like I don't see like why we should keep something that's outdated. So in 1872 they made the ball dimension fixed, because every year they kept changing the ball sizes, which I mean some teams felt wasn't fair. And obviously, if every year the size of the ball change, then it's gonna be very hard to get used to that in terms of training. 1886 is when like 11 players a team and 90 minutes for a match was kind of decided to be like the norm. Then in 1891, the penalty rule was created, because last time, right, when you were fouled in the penalty area, actually they didn't really have a penalty area last time, but if you were fouled in like 88, for example, someone kicked you down, right? You won't get a penalty. Instead, what will happen is the opponent's goalkeeper will just take a goal kick and pass you back the ball to your own team's goalkeeper, which obviously wasn't fair lah. So I think then that's where they started to realize, oh shit, yeah, we didn't consider this before. Let's add this now. Actually, and then we don't even have to go back so far, because if you look in 2018 or 2019, that's when they introduced VAR, because they realized now we got the technology. We haven't really thought about this, but now it can help the game. It can make it fairer. People won't say, oh, the referee came along or there's corruption in the game, because we can rely on the camera, and then there's like that more objective evidence rather than, okay, the referee say what means what. So I think if in that aspect, right, we haven't really been thinking about the girls, and then now since we've already kind of thought of all the arguments, why not come and implement it,
So who do you think they should sort of start the ball rolling, make it a thing, a differentiation thing? Who do you think will have that influence?
FIFA definitely has to be the one to push for this, and like particularly the IFB, which is more dedicated for this like international football regulations. So if there's like international effort to follow it, right, then it will make more sense. Because as what you say, if let's say we were just to make the change in Singapore for Singaporean football and no one else follows, right, then there's gonna be a lot of things that they will lose out on, all of the prospects, all of the sort of potential playing overseas is going to be much reduced. If let's say your country uses another form of football, then will other people still see it as football if they go and change this much, So it has to start as the international effort. If not, there's no point.
Don, any comments, Don?
Not really, man. Not really.
This is an interesting point, right? So about having to get the football, because unlike the other sports, yes, so the change I'm still thinking about the logistic and the operational side of it, right? So the change would definitely be big, because I mean the goalpost, for example, yes, if the pitch size, you can just draw new lines and whatnot, right? But the goalpost itself, right? You have to have two sets of goalposts now. If let's say you are still using the same pitch, unless you devise a new mechanism where the goalpost size can change, right? Yeah, that's probably something can look at, I guess. But this will be a huge change, and it may take some time before we realize it, right? But then again, like I said earlier, what about the women also? Do they want this? I can imagine some would welcome it, right? For the fact that they would be able to enjoy the game as much as the men. They will be able to make the so-called long passes, right? I mean, in relative to the pitch size lah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I can imagine some of them will welcome it, but I guess some. I'm thinking I may be wrong. Okay, but I would imagine some would say no. This is a sexist argument. Yeah,
I think
to say that we are not capable. I don't know.
I think particularly the goalkeepers would argue for this, whereas the attackers, because they are exploiting this height difference in the goalpost and they just make a lot of headers or just use a lot of high balls to chip the goalkeepers, right? I think they will be the ones that are against this, because it's gonna be a worse off for their goal scoring type of records.
Yeah. All right. Okay, I think I got nothing else. Anything else, Sim?
No, I'm glad that we can actually kind of open our minds to this kind of topics, and I'm glad that you guys are also seeing it a bit more differently now. Regardless of how much I changed your minds or whatever, but yeah, it was a good conversation to have.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing these points, man. Yeah, never occurred to me about making the sports more entertaining, right? And that it will benefit everyone, not just the players themselves, not just the women footballers, but us, the audience as well. Yeah. All right. Okay. If not, then I think we can. That's it for today. Any last words?
All right. No last words from me. No last words from me.
All right. So there we have it. Women football, should we change the goalpost size and the football pitch size, right? So main argument is yes, we should, because it was the sizes were first designed in according to the men's physique, right? So and when women come in and started playing football, this has disadvantaged them, right? So they're not able to play as well as the men do, and we don't find it entertaining because they can't perform as well as the men on the pitch. They are not able to make the long passes. They are not able to make the saves. All right, simply because the goalpost size and the pitch size are actually designed for men, right, not for women. And there are already sports that have differentiation in terms of the gender, right? So why don't we have this differentiation for football? So it's time for us to think about that. And I guess the one that should be pushing for it would be, like what Sim was saying, would be the FIFA, right? Yeah.
Exactly. It was
Okay,
nice
so
talking to you guys.
all right. Okay, that's it. That's it for today. That's it for this episode. Until next episode, take care, everyone.
Bye.
Okay, bye.